Hi, my name's Jeff. I'm one of the founders of PlanningPod, and now we're going to look at our guest list tool and how you can manage your attendees and guests for each of your events. The guest list tool is located inside of the event, so we're going to click on the Events tab in the main navigation bar first. And then we are going to locate the event where we would like to start working on the guest list. So we're going to click on our event here, and then we're going to go over here to the right and find the link to the guest list tool right here and click on it. And as you can see right here, the master list is empty. We haven't put any guest in it yet. So to add a new guest manually, just click on the Add New Guest button. In this field, first at the top, you can decide if you want to add this particular guest to one of the event guest lists, which we are not going to do yet. Instead, we're going to add their first name and last name, and there are other fields here for adding a prefix like Ms. or Mr., as well as a suffix and a title. You can also designate if this guest is an out-of-town guest or not. And then in these fields here, you can begin to add the guest's mailing address, as well as their email address and their phone number. And once we're done entering this information, in the field below here is a notes field where we can add items such as travel information, flight details. You can add lodging or hotel information here. Pretty much anything that's relevant or salient to this particular guest and information that you want to store for them, this is a great place to store it. And finally, in the field below this is an area for adding invitation address, verbiage or wording. This would be information that you could pass along to someone like a calligrapher. And once you hit the save button, that guest has been saved to the master list. And once we click on them, we have the ability to go up here and edit the guest details. If this is an event that involves gifts, you can add a gift for the guest if they've given a gift and details about that gift. Here's where you can add a +1 for this guest, and here's where you can delete the guest. And down below, you can click on this item to pull up a map for the guest, and you can also click on their email address, which will pull up your email program so you can send the guest an email. Instead of adding guests one by one, you can click on the More button and then go down here to the Import Guests from File link, where you can import guests from either a vCard file or a CSV file. We do recommend importing from a vCard file to better import. You can download a vCard file from many popular address book applications. However, CSV files tend to be more popular, so we're going to upload a CSV file of our guest list from my computer, which I'm going to find right here. And I'm going to start the upload process. On this page, our application gives you the ability to match the fields in your CSV file to the fields in our database. And so you can see some of the fields down here don't match. And so I'm going to match the address field in PlanningPod with the address field in my CSV file. And I'm going to continue to match up all of those fields here. And just as a side note here, if you have guests in an Excel file, in the Excel program, you can save the Excel file as a CSV file simply by going to the Save As option inside of Excel and then saving the file as a CSV file. And so I'm going to finish up matching the fields. And now that I'm finished with that, I will go up here to the top and click on the Import button. And here you can see all of my guests from my CSV file have now been loaded into my master list. Now this master list is just the start of working with your event guest list, because you can add any combination of people from the master list to one or more event guest lists. To create event guest lists for your event, we're going to go up here and we're going to click on the More button. And then in the top item right here, it says Manage Event Guest Lists. We're going to click on that. Now our system has already created one event guest list that has the name of the event, and Typically, this will be your main event list, or so this will be the list for your main event, but you can also add other lists for your event, like say for this particular event, we're going to have a pre-event happy hour and a post-event brunch, and I am going to invite some people from my master list to those two other sort of sub-events, but not everyone. So once I've added those event lists, I'm going to click on the Save button. And now I can start working with those inside of the guest list for this particular event. Another thing I can do is I can add meal options for each of those event lists. So for example, my main event, the Jones Lucas reception, is a plated dinner. And I want my guests to have their choice of 5 different types of meals. So I'm going to put those options all in here. I'm going to offer a chicken, a steak, a salmon, a vegetarian, and a child's meal option. So once I'm all finished with those, I'm going to click on the Save button. Now you may have noticed the checkboxes next to each of the guests. You can click on these items to open up options. For example, it opens up an actions menu on the right hand side. If you click on the top, it will activate all of the guests. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add all of my guests to my main event guest list. So I'm going to click on this Add Guests to Guest List link, and then I'm going to select my main event. So now I have added everyone from my master list into the main guest list for my event. Then I'm going to select some individuals here who I want to add to my post-event brunch list. So now I've added them to that list, and then I'm going to click on a few more guests that I want to invite to my to my pre-event happy hour. So I'm going to click on the people I want to add to that list. I'm going to click on the Add Guests to Guest List item, and I'm going to select the pre-event happy hour. And if you want to view the people from the master list you've added to each of those event guest lists, you can just click on the More button, and you can filter the guest list by clicking on this link right here. This lets you filter the list in a variety of ways by people you've added to the lists or RSVPs or whatnot. So we're going to click on Post-Event Brunch because we want to see the people that we've added to that event list. And here they are right here. To return to the master list, you would just click on the guest list link right here. Now let's say you wanted to add a +1 for one of your guests. You would just click on the guest for whom you wanted to add the +1, and then you would go up here to the Add +1 Guest button, click on it, and it will basically put that guest and the +1 into a new family. You can add more than one +1 to each guest also. As you can see, we've added 2 +1 guests to Cynthia Bass. You can also group guests that you've added to your list together as a family or as a group by clicking on the guests that you want to group, and then going over here to the right-hand side to Actions and click on Group as Family. And this gives you the option to choose a primary guest and then to designate the relationship to that guest of the other guests. And once you hit Save, those people have been grouped together as what we call a family. And you can create as many family groupings as you wish. And just to let you know, the term family is just our word for a group of guests who are coming together. And so I'm going just to designate the relationship of these guests to the primary, click on Save, and here is my second family that I've just created. One way you can manage RSVP information and more information for each guest is simply by clicking on the guest and then clicking on the Edit button. So we're going to do that now for our attendee, Addie Dixon. So I'm going to click on her right here. I'm going to click on the Edit button. And this will allow me to edit information so I can add addee to one of my event guest lists, I can designate an invitation priority for her for each of those lists, and I can also designate an RSVP status for her for each of those event guest lists, as well as a meal selection. And I think I'm going to also add addee to our post-event brunch list. I'm going to invite her to that also. So I'm just going to designate that there. And then you can also edit information here. And once you're done, click on Save. And here you can see that RSVP information has been saved with this particular guest. Now, a faster way to add RSVP information to multiple guests is by using the checkboxes and then going over here to the right-hand side, clicking on Change Guest RSVPs, and then finding the event list for which you want to designate the RSVP status for those guests. So I'm going to say these guests will be attending our main event, the Jones Lucas reception list. And here you can see the status for one of those people that we had selected, and another one of those people that we had selected has been changed. They will be now attending that particular event. There are other bulk actions you can take by clicking on the check boxes. For instance, you can remove guests from one of your event guest lists. You can ungroup people from a family. You can change their meal selection status. So let's see, I'm going to choose some of the guests that have had meal selections. I'm going to click on there, and I'm going to say that for those particular guests, they will be eating steak at our main event. And here you can see that designation has been changed for that guest. You can also use the check boxes to change the invitation priority for particular guests. So you can just say for these particular guests, we want them to be on the A list for our main event. And then you can also delete guests in bulk by clicking on the checkbox and then clicking on the delete guest option under the actions menu. Your attendees can also RSVP through the event website. So we're going to click on the event website tool, and then we're just going to click on the view website to pull up the website that your attendees could navigate to, and we're going to click on the RSVP page of your public website. Here is where your guest can type in their first name, last name, and then a CAPTCHA code. So we're going to RSVP for one of our guests, Janet. And once we type in the CAPTCHA code here, it will allow Janet to RSVP to the two lists that we've put her on. So she can choose between attending and not attending, and she can also choose her meal option for that particular list, and she's not going to be attending that particular event. And if we go back to our guest list tool inside of the event and we click on Janet, it will show those items have been updated based on what she responded to on the public website. And I'm going to go back to the public website and show you what it would look like for a guest who is RSVPing who has +1s attached to them. So Cynthia, as you recall, had 2 +1 guests attached to her. So Cynthia can RSVP for herself and both of her +1 guests. And please note that if you have grouped guests into a family, each of those guests will need to RSVP using their own first and last name. So now I'll go down to Cynthia, and here is that information that has been recorded based on her input via the public site. I want to show you a few more features that you can use inside of the More drop-down menu, so I'm going to click on that right here. You've got the ability to view your RSVP and meal counts by clicking on this item right here. So I'm going to select that, and it will show me the RSVPs and meal counts for each of my event lists that I have created inside of this event. And I'm going to return to the filter guest list option. And you can use this to filter the list in a variety of ways. You can show all the people inside of the master list. You can show the people who have RSVP'd that are attending for each of your guest lists. For example, here are the people that have RSVP'd yes, or who are attending for my main event. If I go back to the filter guest list, I can also filter guests that have said they are not attending, or people who have not responded. So these are guests who have not yet responded to my post-event brunch list. And you can also filter by invitation priority or thank yous sent and not sent if you have an event that involves gifts and thank you notes. You can also download a PDF file of your list. And again, you can download a PDF of everyone you've attached to each of your separate event lists. You can also download a PDF of your RSVPs. So I'm going to download a PDF of guests that have said they're attending my main event list. And here's what that PDF file would look like. And it includes all of the guest details for each guest who has basically replied yes to that event guest list. In addition, you can also download CSV files of your guest list. So I'm going to click on Export the CSVs. And again, you've got many options. In many cases, you will probably be wanting to download a list of people who said they will be attending, which you can do right there. So I'm going to open that up in Excel, and here is what that list would look like. So it gives you something that's a little bit more flexible, a downloaded file that's a little bit more flexible to work with. And the last thing in the More menu is the Notify Contacts option. And this basically just lets you shoot off a quick email notification to contacts who you are working with inside of your event to tell them that there have been changes made to the event guest list. And here in this box, you can type in the name of a guest to easily pull them up inside of your guest list. You can also attach a guest list to a floor plan so that you can drag and drop your guests onto chairs inside of the floor plan. So I'm going to go into the floor plans tool. I'm going to create a new floor plan. So I'm going to give it a name here, as well as a width and length. And as you can see at the bottom of this, since we've created 3 event guest lists for our event, we have the ability to attach one of those lists to the floor plan. So I'm going to attach our main event list to the floor plan, and you can see it will tell us that right here. And so now when I launch the floor plan, a guests tab will show up, and once I start putting tables onto the floor plan, I can start dragging and drop guests from this list here to the right hand side to chairs on my tables. And that way I can create a seating arrangement based on my guest list. Well, thanks for watching this very long but very thorough video on our guest list tool. And if you have any more questions, please reach out to us via email or give us a call.